Don't do
I don't trust myself. But I'll go play. Go do a sound check.
Sure. Yeah. Do we need to do one with Karen as well? Okay. And I'm not sure where she is at the moment. Oh, there she is. Yes. Okay. How are we? How are we? Yes. Okay. Karen, would you come and do a sound check?
I was told her. How does that sound? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Lovely. How are you, Mark? Good to see you. How are you? Grand. Life is good. It's good to see you.
How are you? Welcome back. Thank you. It's been a while. This is just some days over the summer.
Yes. Good.
Glad you're back. Oh, I'm glad to be back. Good to see you.
I was just mentioning, I'm on the program committee, just mentioning chairs and organization, something more inviting. What do you think about that? Rising.
What?
Yes.
I'm happy.
Me too. We still have devoted members and friends. We have no financial issues whatsoever. We are so lucky. Numbers are slow to come in, but they're coming back, especially now that people are returning. And so I've read so many articles about how people are leaving.
Oh, it's hard to tell, but it's everybody's hands are moving this morning. Welcome. I just heard. You want to touch your head and as you came out,
Thank you so much. So much light in this so much. I've never
And I keep looking at yeah. Right. And so next one. Not here, the
But with your, yes.
small.
Oh,
Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous. And this is comfortable.
Yes.
We're both loving your jacket, yes. Yes, I know. Okay, that'll be great. Yes.
So I don't like our microphone.
Oh,
It's too echoey for me.
okay, okay. Yep, they're on. They're on. Yeah. All right. I'll be here next, you know.
Thank you, Beth. That was beautiful. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We have lots of people here today. This is wonderful to see. And welcome to our members and friends who are tuning in remotely. You are a very important part of this congregation, and we're glad that you're tuning in to watch. I am Cindy Steele, a member of this congregation and today's service leader. I add a special welcome to those of you who may be here for the first time or the first time in a while. We're glad you are here. It is our custom to invite those who wish to stand and introduce yourselves if you'd like to do that. And you could, if there's anybody who wishes to introduce him or herself, please stand and I'll call on you. And we're a lovely congregation. We welcome people beautifully. Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Joel Sandberg. My oldest son is Derek.
Derek. Derek. And what's your name? Mallory.
Derek and Mallory actually got married since the last time.
Congratulations, Derek and Mallory. Congratulations. And welcome, Joel. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, hi. Karen Sandmeyer, who lives in Green Bay. Hi, Karen. How are you? Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you. And again, welcome all. Following the service, you were invited to cross the foyer and move into the gathering room for some coffee and conversation. And then after a few minutes, some chimes will ring, inviting you back into this room in this area over here for a discussion to further our understanding of Reverend Karen's topic. And you're welcome to join for that as well. If you are interested in learning more about Unitarian Universalism or this congregation, please visit the guest table in the foyer. It is certainly my pleasure this morning to introduce the Reverend Karen Sandberg, who has been a regular speaker here at UUFDC, and we're so honored to have her back again. From the front of the order of service, you can see that she was ordained at the Appleton Fellowship, and as a retired chaplain and empty nester, she dabbles in lino cut printing and, thank you for this, volunteering at Planned Parenthood. And yes, thank you. She just told me that she meets regularly with a group of women for coffee and condoms. Thank you for being here. And her message today is, what we resist persists. And I ask respectfully that you please turn off all your cell phones or other devices that make noise. And if they make noise now, it's just fine. You may make noise now. So this is the moment in the service where we have announcements. And I'd like to draw your attention to the back of the fellowship order of service. And are there any other brief announcements related to the fellowship? And our friend Terry will bring you the microphone if you have an announcement over here. Cindy has an announcement. Oh, first, Sarah.
Well, later this week, we will have really awesome guests from all over the nation visiting our lectern for poetry readings this Thursday, April 27th and Friday, April 28th. Both of the readings will be at 7 p.m. 16 Indigenous Poetry Fellows from 12 tribal nations will gather with distinguished Indigenous faculty in Door County for their second Nation Poets Mentoring Retreat. A musical performance featuring Wade Fernandez of the Menominee Nation will follow Friday's reading. And it's so awesome. These poets, they're all different ages and they're all different people. And how fun that we get 16 new people on our stage this week.
Thanks, Sarah.
Perhaps you read in the Pulse that Loaves and Fishes is being resurrected, and it is held at Stella Maris Parish on the second Thursday of each month. It is a collaborative effort amongst all of the Northern Door faith communities. Our part this time is in May. We will be bringing the desserts. So if anyone is interested, we will be bringing bars of any sort, but please let me know. I need somewhere between 75 and 100 bars, so probably 6 or 7 different people would be very helpful. So let me know and I will give you more of the details. Also, in the e-blast that will come out next week, we do have enough volunteers for the May dinner service, but they will be looking for volunteers for the upcoming ones. So if you're interested in helping prep food, serve food, or clean up afterwards, again, that woman's telephone number will be in the e-blast this week. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Anna is going to come up to the microphone for a special message.
Good morning, everyone. Gosh, it's so wonderful to see all of you. I'm Anna Knapp, and I feel like I'm not being picked up. Can you hear me all right? Okay, so I'm Anna Knapp, and I am a member and also your current vice president. And I've been asked to speak to you today in our pledge season. So I'm a little nervous because I've decided to get a little vulnerable here with you this morning. So bear with me if I get a little shaky. Something tells me that all of you will bear with me as you have over all of these years that I've been a part of this congregation. Oh, see there, the leg goes. Okay. My husband and I moved to Door County in 2010. And this was a place that I grew up in. We came here to raise our very young family. We left professional jobs, lives that were very successful, and wanted to be here to be in a small community and be around family. Well, what we didn't realize at that time is that we were going to enter a very different life than what we had been a part of. I left, like I said, a professional job and decided to stay home with my kids and be a farmer. And this was a chain of events that really put us into a kind of a weird situation for us where we ended up living in poverty, actually. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was in a situation where I probably was in depression, being a young mom, home alone. And in that time, that's when I found UUFDC. So I became a member officially in 2014. And it was in this environment and with your support that I myself really got my life back. You encouraged me to get involved in committees. I became a paid Sunday school teacher, which at that time, that income was very important to me. And throughout all of these years, I've become more and more involved in this wonderful, supportive community. I've been on the board. I've been head of many committees. I've been trusted with the work on the sustainability task force. And it is really through all of the wonderful things that happen here at UUFDC that I myself am finding, I'm in a good place. I'm with good people. I'm with a caring, we say those words every week, right? We're in a caring community. So as you think about making your pledges and your financial commitment to this fellowship, think about all those stories that are out there that maybe are not brave enough to be told up here in front of the group. I'm sure that many of you are looking into your hearts right now and thinking about how this place has been a lifeline for you as well. Whether it's just one time or several times, we all need UUFDC. So thank you for listening to my shaky, vulnerable message here today, and I look forward to continuing to serve you.
Thank you, Anna. Okay, now when we're singing and we get teary, we call that puddle up. We puddle up? Okay. Now that we're all puddled up, we need to sing. So the best thing to do for singing when you puddle up is to breathe right from here, right from your sternum. So let's all stand as you wish and are able for just number 6, just as long as I have breath. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Yeah, that I had made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dreams and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to love. Thank you. That was beautifully sung. So we begin our service with the lighting of the chalice, and I begin with these words. We kindle this flame, honoring the doorways in our souls, the windows through which we gaze at one another, the balconies where we catch glimpses of sky, the thresholds we stand on this morning, wondering, hoping, fearing, dreaming. Please stand in body or spirit for our unison affirmation, followed by the singing of the doxology, and both are printed in this order of service. So please say with me, we gathered together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, in every land, by every tongue. Thank you. Thank you. Now is the time in the service when we share briefly a joy that might be filling our hearts or a concern that might weigh heavily so that we can help bear the burden. Are there any joys and concerns this morning? Terry will bring the mic. And please remember that we are live online right now. Please share nothing about someone else unless you have their permission. Thank you. Juliana?
Hi, I'm Juliana Newman, and my concern is about the changes that the UUA has proposed to make to our Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, affecting our 7 principles. And I want to remind you that we got an email this past a week ago about a dinner on Wednesday evening, to a light dinner to discuss this Article 2. It will be held in the gathering room, and you need to RSVP to Sarah by tomorrow. So please consider attending that if you share my concern. Also, if you go to uua.org and search for Article 2, I'm sure you'll find lots of information to read up.
Judy Brudd. I just wanted to give a big thank you to those folks from our fellowship who were mentioned in Friday's newspaper for their outstanding work in our protecting our environment and to holding up nature and caring so much about our community. And I didn't ask their permission, but since it was publicized in the paper, I want to thank Marilyn Hansotia. I wish she'd stand. I think we
Yes,
need
Marilyn,
all of them to
please.
stand.
Thank you.
Dick Smythe was in there.
Dick Smythe.
Come
yes.
on, Dick.
Please stand, Dick. Go ahead.
And Mary Smythe, who's not with us this morning. But thank you all. And anybody else working on the committees, thank you for all your work.
It was a proud moment.
It was.
Yeah, hi, I'm Hank Wills. First off, thanks, Judy, for those remarks, and Marilyn, thanks for going to bat for us. But following on to Juliana's comments, and thank you for making them. That was a letter that I had sent to you in the e-blast about the Article 2 and all of the stuff that's going on with it with regard to the revision. Also in that email blast, there were about 5 references, both pro and con. UUA obviously pro, but then others as well, like the Fifth Principle Project, who are maybe not as confident about the wisdom of making those changes. So read them, and if you can join us, join us. I think there's about 16 people signed up right now. So thank you for those comments. The joy, this is joys and concerns. My joy was in listening to Anna this morning. And it's wonderful to be part of a fellowship that can be so moving, so influential, so powerful in somebody's life. So that's a joy to me this morning.
Hi, I'm Mark Richards. Probably know what I'm going to talk about. So this week there was a rash of people being shot for simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We are living in a land of fear. People are afraid to go to their doors. Apparently, we should be afraid to go to somebody else's door. We in the Unitarian Universalist world have a powerful message for love. And the only way we're going to overcome this fear is by speaking our love out loud.
Thank you.
Trish Black sharing an email that I received. I do have permission to share a little update on our beloved Billy Ryan, and I just thought everybody would want to hear. So we had an outreach from Brooke Odegaard, her daughter, and about some end-of-life things, which at 90 plus, it's probably time to be thinking about that. But anyway, she is in facility and is, progressing down the sad but challenging path of dementia. But Brooke wrote and said, I just commented how cherished she was here. And she wrote back about how much her mom loved it here. And she said, 4 times my mom has become lucid. And she always speaks about the UUs and misses everyone. During this time, she knows our names. She wants nail polish and a bath. She reads newspapers and her favorite book, Watership Downs. These lucid times last about a day and a half, and she stays awake the whole time. When she goes to sleep, she wakes up in her normal sleepy state. She also attached a couple of photos if you want to see them. One is when she's in kind of her sleepy in bed state, and the other is when she's up in her chair and she's dressed and the nails are done. And so if you want to see those, I'm happy to share them after service.
Thank you.
Daffodils.
Aw. A plethora of daffodils. Yeah.
Is that it? This is my third day in a row after 60 years without glasses. I can see you all, but I just can't read a damn thing.
I've lived that. Thank you, everybody, for your joys and concerns. Thank you. We will now have the morning's offering supporting the spiritual and educational work and the outreach that we all have learned this morning is so valuable. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It always brings me such joy to be up here and see your happy, smiling faces. Cindy wanted me to mention that my message today is about resistance, and that is one of the UUA's monthly themes. So this month it is resistance. Our reading today is called The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning there's a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house clean of all its furniture, treat each guest honorably. They may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So holding that, let us step into a time of silent prayer and meditation. Well, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again before I begin. The stories I tell about my past patients, they've been greatly changed, but I share them as these are the lessons these holy and sacred teachers have taught me. And as always, I hope they help teach you too. Ron was a 75-year-old hospice patient of mine. He wasn't able to bear his own weight anymore. His heart was failing. He had trouble breathing. But there was more than physical health problems going on with Ron. Emotionally, he had been beating himself up for years. Heavy drinking seemed to quiet his mind, but it also wreaked havoc on his body, not to mention his family relationships. You see, Ron carried a secret. He carried a regret. He hid it from almost everyone, even his new wife of 7 years. His health issues now required that he live in an assisted living facility. And one day he fell, wedged in between the toilet and the sink. He laid there, helpless, unable to move his arm to even push his life alert button. Don't worry, he was fine. Somebody did arrive pretty quickly. But a few days later, when I visited, he finally confessed his secret regret. You see, Ron had a gay son, a son who had come out to him over 25 years ago, and Ron carried a lot of shame around this. He felt he was responsible for making his son gay. He blamed himself. You see, Ron had a very big job, and he traveled a lot, and he was hardly ever home. He firmly believed that this was his fault. He hadn't been around to teach his son how to be a proper man. In the emotional stew that resulted after his son came out, to push back against his own feelings of shame and try to correct his son, Ron had told him that if he chose this lifestyle, he was no longer his son. Ron truly thought this threat, this awful excommunication, would cause his son to choose to be straight. It was a different time, Ron admitted as he unfolded his tale. His parenting style often used anger and threats to get what he wanted from his children, and it often worked, but not on that day. Gratefully, his son knew himself. His son was sure and strong, and so his son left. Ron had not seen him for over 25 years. His mother and the siblings kept in touch, and Ron heard about his life, but the two of them hadn't seen or spoken to one another since the son had left. Don't be fooled. This separation haunted him, and it caused him great pain. Ron missed his son, who was such a funny and talented musician. His son was the kid who brought a smile to everyone's face. And the spirit and memory of his son had pushed up against his stubborn heart for all of those 25 years. Not a day went by that he didn't think of him. That day, on the bathroom floor, stuck between the toilet and the sink, he told me all he could think about was his son. Was this how it was going to end? Him dead on the floor next to the toilet? And he had never reconnected. In that moment, he decided enough was enough. It was time to reach out to his son and apologize and reconcile. Psychologist Carl Jung was one of the first to understand that all we resist, all that we refuse to accept or deal with, persists. What we resist persists. In my work as a chaplain, I saw this unfold almost every single day in some shape or form. Old messages, old untruths clung to my patients like sticky cobwebs. We fool ourselves into thinking if we can just let things go, stop thinking about them, shut those thoughts down, that we can grow around them. We think we can just not allow them to influence us or affect who we are today. We think it's easier not to think about it. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Jung was absolutely right. It does persist, pushing itself out in us in behaviors we don't understand. Increased stress, anger, fatigue, depression, weight changes, anxiety, and even addictions. We're living and breathing things, we people, and our feelings just want to live and breathe too. Feelings can be so threatening. They can take our breath away. They can cause us pain and scramble our thinking. So we hide them, we bury them, and we nod our heads in approval when we think we've gotten the best of them until we don't. Psychologist Dr. Leon Seltzer says that we show resistance when we are not able or willing to deal with negative experiences in our lives. This can happen in a lot of ways. The mind will always find alternative ways to deal with our problems. But the trouble is that when we deny or hide these experiences, the mind learns how to deal with those issues in ways that are not always beneficial. Often they can be harmful. Often we can't even see that we're doing that. And truthfully, some of us don't even know any other way of being because we have been taught at the knees of our dysfunctional families. Dr. Seltzer says that the most common forms of resistance is to deny what's happening. Do you do that? Or do you know people who are good at this? Something difficult or horrible is going on and no one addresses it. Nobody speaks about it. If it isn't talked about, eventually it moves into a murky fog as something that becomes taboo and cannot be named. The mind then gives permission not to face it, but it's still there. It just burrows deep now, and it goes deeper, and we become more wounded. It waits to emerge again. Studies show that when denial is the form of resistance, it's actually the most difficult to overcome. Over time, it causes the issue to become that much more shameful and that much more twisted. Another form is to minimize the problem. Now, this is a step forward than denial because you're actually mentioning what it is. But the feelings and opportunity for processing get swept underneath the rug. We do this with children. Oh, that's not so bad. Stop being such a baby. We tell children. And as a woman, I have come up against this too. Women are often told, you're too sensitive. You're making such a big deal about this. But I think men suffer the most by minimizing. They're often told to shut down their emotions early in their lives. They're told not to cry. They're told emotions are a sign of weakness. We all learn it's best not to really look too closely at something for too long. It makes others uncomfortable. It's better if we just admit that it wasn't so bad. And then the form my mother was good at was blaming other people. I was always puzzled, as when she made a mistake, she would often cry out accusingly, "Look what you made me do." As a child, I was never sure how that was possible. But now looking back, it was how she resisted having to claim her own emotions around her mistakes or her frustrations. It was much easier to blame the innocent bystander. The last form of resistance that Seltzer mentions is kind of a kicker. I do it. I bet you do too. I think as a nation, we have fallen into this pattern of behavior. It's that we try to change the other person. We try to get those around us to agree with our point of view about a particular situation. We see that now in our political landscape. We huddle in our tribes, nodding in agreement over the latest ridiculous event. And we push back against our family and neighbors and coworkers if they do not agree with us. But the reality is that we are all different. We all hold things in our own unique way. As UUs, we know this deep in our core. It's one of our principles. And yet we too use this as a form of resistance against the other. Admit it, we could spend the rest of the afternoon talking about those people. What's wrong with them? How can they think like that? How can they endorse that person? How can they make those choices? If we can get others to join our way of thinking, then we can rightly claim our ideas as the ultimate truth. Given space and time, Ron began to process his feelings around his son. His shame had made him believe he had failed as a father. I listened to him talk for many days. And then I asked him if he had taught his other children how to be straight, as they were. He sputtered, "Nobody chooses to be straight, you just are." And then he stopped. The words that had so quickly jumped from his mouth now laid in front of him. Suddenly his eyes widened. He sat silently for a while, and then he said, "It's the same for gay people, isn't it?" And I said, "I'm no expert, but I would say so." Tears flowed, and Ron realized that not only did he have to seek forgiveness from his son, he needed to forgive himself. His resistance in dealing with his feelings around his son had kept him from really processing the whole story. When he was able to sit with it and examine his own thinking, it all became clear. UU Reverend Karen Herring, one of my old roommates from seminary, wrote in this month's UU World magazine that we too can trust that when we let go of whatever has become too small in the changing conditions of our heart, we'll find the knowledge we need on a cellular level. Ron saw it all so clearly once he gave space for his emotions. Opening up space for our emotions allows us to wriggle free of that too tight skin that we've bound ourselves up in as we resisted. Buddhist Pema Chodron says that when something hurts or causes us distress in life, we don't usually think of that as our path or a source of wisdom. In fact, we do almost anything to get off that path. It becomes a flashing red light, a warning sign that we're moving in the wrong direction. However, she says, that's actually the path of wisdom. Being in the uncomfortable moment is the place we should be in sometimes. She says being present to our feelings is the only way forward. Often her students would ask her how experiencing awful difficulties can actually be enlightening. It feels so wrong when things feel uncomfortable. That's usually when we shut down our feelings and avoid them. But the truth is when we can find ourselves in an emotional mess, that's where learning and growth begin. We shouldn't beat ourselves up when our life starts to feel like it's falling apart, because that's where change and creativity begin. Instead, Chodron says we can reflect on the fact that how we choose to relate to our mess will become an opportunity to sow the seeds of how we will relate to whatever happens next. Yeah. And to me, this sounds like the very definition of enlightenment. We can make ourselves miserable, or we can make ourselves strong. The amount of effort is the same. Chodron says right now, depending on what we choose or how we are creating our state of mind for tomorrow, not to mention this afternoon, next week, and all the years of our lives, our daily thoughts and choices help us lay the brickwork for our path in the future. In our reading earlier, Rumi compares the emotions that rise up and flow through us every day to be like guests who come to visit us, our bodies, the guest house. He doesn't want us to discriminate against emotions that are hard and uncomfortable. He tells us to welcome them all in. I love that he chose the word welcome. We usually think of that word to mean we're glad to see somebody, that we're making space for them in our lives. And most of us would never welcome heartache or pain. He says, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who sweep out your house, treat them honorably. They might be there to clear out some things, to create space for some new delight. This reminded me of a time when I was lost and devastated. I'd begun seminary in my late 40s and with a goal to become a hospice chaplain, and I loved it. I loved everything about seminary and chaplaincy. I even received an honorarium award upon graduation for being a leader in pastoral care studies. I still had to do a residency, though, in chaplaincy, and I had been promised a position at Theta Care after I had graduated. But, as you know, things change. Theta Care is a business. By the time I graduated, they were having a hiring freeze. They could not hire me. So I applied at a number of other spots around the valley. I did not get selected for a single thing. I had to do a residency to be a chaplain. Now what? Was I wrong about all of this? Doors were slamming in my face. I thought I was good at this. What was happening? I was lost. I was sick to my stomach for weeks. I was so stressed and full of shame. I wasn't good enough, my old gremlin whispered in my ears. To do this, would I have to move out of the area now? Disrupt my young teenage daughter's life? Create havoc for my husband? This wasn't supposed to be so hard. My heart ached and my life felt so untethered. A few months later, a friend called. She was friends with someone who was head of a hospice agency in the area, and she was looking for a chaplain. I applied and I got the job and was able to use the job as my site for my residency. I actually got paid full time instead of getting a stipend. And they promised to keep me on full time after I graduated. I worked for them for 10 years and then retired. It was perfect. It was more than perfect. A crowd of sorrows had violently swept my house when I could not be hired by Theta Care. But that had created a space for a new delight. Rumi was right. We should welcome the shame, the darkness, the malice, and greet them at the door laughing. So I helped Ron compose a letter to his son. It took a while. The words came out stiff and choppy, but over time, Ron found his voice that he wanted his son to hear. And we mailed it, and we waited. I had warned Ron that sometimes reaching out like this can feel like a little too late for those of us whom we've harmed. But I also knew Ron needed to say those words to make things right for himself the best that he could. Even if his son never responded, Ron knew in his heart that he had to say those words. Weeks passed, and then the phone rang. It was his son. His son had read his letter, and he was going to come out for a visit. I wasn't there the day his son arrived, but I saw Ron a week later. The joy and delight that shone from his face was unbelievable. His son had forgiven him. The son shared with him that he often dreamt about getting a letter like that. And then one day, there it was. The two of them spent days and days together, catching up, talking deeply, and making amends. Ron got to see what a strong, kind, and proper man his son had turned out to be. And when the day came and Ron passed away, there was only love and a gentle peace. What resists persists. What we resist persists. You, Reverend Karen Herring asks, is there a skin that you wear that no longer fits or serves who you are or who you are becoming? Is there a story that still digs deeply into your being? How might you step into that struggle instead of resisting? What if you looked instead for the wisdom that resides along your path that might allow you to grow in new ways, ways you may have never imagined? Persist instead of resist. The amount of effort is the same. May it be so, and amen.
Thank you, Karen. It's very thought-provoking. So please, we get to sing again. Number 22, Dear Weaver of Our Lives' Design, please stand in body or spirit. Dear Weaver of our lives' design, whose patterns all obey, with skillful fingers gently guide the sturdy threads that will survive the tangle of our days. Take up the fabric of our lives with hands that gently hold, bind in the ragged edge that care would sunder and that pain would tear, and mend our raveling souls. Let eyes that in the plainest cloth a hidden beauty see, discern in us our richest hues, show us the patterns we may use to set our spirits free. Thank you. Please be seated. After the postlude, please head to the gathering room for coffee and conversation. After the bells ring, come back here over to this end of the room for our conversation with Reverend Karen. We will close our service with these words. And for what it's worth, this is my favorite closing of all times. Let us go our ways, knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than we now know. Let us be searchers with our fellow travelers, adventurers in ways untrod, holding the hope of discovery high within us and sharing that hope and whatever discovery may come with others.